Hello and welcome to this presentation. I'm going to be speaking about the incident management requirements of the NDIS Practice Standards for providers. Incident management is an important part for all providers, as you're probably aware, and regardless of your registration group, whether you're heading down certification or verification pathways, incident management is something that all providers need to understand and have implemented as part of their management systems. Obviously, the size of their incident management system will vary and should be proportional in relation to the complexities of the services and supports they provide and the scale of their organisation. So, firstly, the NDIS Practice Standards state that each participant is safeguarded by the provider's incident management system. And what your incident management system looks like will vary, whether you are a sole trader right through to a large complex organisation. That's going to change. And it is important to note, and you're probably already aware, but the NDIS practice standards are quite non-prescriptive, meaning they don't exactly tell you how to do the things that they want you to do, with some exceptions, of course. So therefore, for some, this might be in a flowchart form. For others, it might be a complex policy followed by procedures. It really depends, and it's going to be up to each provider. It's important to note that there's a lot of different references, and in particular, when we're looking at incident management, we need to refer to the rules, which we'll get to in a second. But as part of the rules, they talk about incidents, reportable incidents, and incidents that must be reported and managed. So it's important for providers to understand that regardless, incident full stop, it needs to be acknowledged when you become aware of an incident occurring with a participant. It needs to be acknowledged, you need to respond to it, you need to take some action in relation to it. It needs to be well managed, and you need to be able to learn from that experience, that incident, in order to therefore better manage future incidences in relation to this part of the continuous improvement process, which we'll get to a second. So, as I mentioned before, there is this distinction about reportable incidences versus incidents that must be recorded and managed. First of all, a reportable incident is an incident that must be recorded and managed, but a reportable incident essentially is more of a serious nature. So incidents, full stop, look at situations where a person with a disability who in connection with the services or supports that you provide could have or they have been caused harm to themselves. Whereas reportable incidences, as defined within the rules in section 16, you'll see talks about death, serious injury, abuse or neglect, unlawful and sexual assault and physical assault, which interestingly they link the two together. However, they are quite different in some ways. And they also talk about sexual misconduct in regards to staff, and non-authorised restrictive practice uses, that should say, not authorised. So essentially, if any of these incidences are reported to you or you become aware of them, they automatically fall into the reportable incident category. And there are rules as to what you need to do with that information, which we'll get to in a second. But it is important to note that reportable incidences also includes allegations. So that is really important to remember, and we don't have enough time to go into that just yet or just now, but I would really advise reading the rules for further clarification in regards to allegations. So what initial action should a provider take when notified of a reportable incident? It's a really good question, and often something that people are quite unsure of what to do when a situation arrives. Personally, and this is I'm an ex-detective, and I worked for many years in sexual crimes areas of Victoria Police. My first advice is to always consider safety first. So if you have an evolving situation that is occurring, you need to make people safe, and that includes participants, your staff, yourself, and anyone else around. Um, Whether they're contractors, maybe there are other people in the community, safety always needs to be first. And so what that might look like, it could be immediately calling emergency services in. It may actually be moving someone to another area in order to make them safe. It may be about responding with first aid to meet those needs. And that really then goes into the second point. This needs to be a victim-centric response. And really, that is technically at the heart of the NDIS practice standards anyway, where it is the response needs to be around the person with a disability, because that's who, needs to be safeguarded in regards to these systems. So we need to consider their health, safety, and well-being, and they are three considerations that are highlighted within the rules as well. And so again, health, it could be about making sure that the ambulance is called. Safety, it could be about contacting the police. It could be about moving them away, making them safe, calling the next of kin to come in and to be with that person, doing whatever possible to meet the needs of that person in that moment. And as we've said, we've already talked about contacting emergency services, police, fire, and ambulance. Really, it's all just about thinking reasonably in that moment. And I understand that sometimes when things are emerging, and look, these incidences, they are generally, out of the box, I guess, to say, it's not something that a lot of us are well practiced in. But it is about just taking that moment to think logically, what really needs to happen right now. And then there is a consideration of, is there immediate risk to other people at this time? So, and this is a really good consideration, especially to ask yourself when someone has come to you with a reportable incident, maybe an allegation of, say, sexual misconduct with a worker. And, it's very difficult because the rules do discuss about affording procedural fairness, which is, allowing people to have a right of reply, to understand exactly what the allegation has been made against them, and an opportunity for them to respond and have their, say their piece, basically, to provide their side of the story. But the question you have to ask, especially for management, is there immediate risk to other participants and or our staff in this moment? And that comes down to management to make an informed choice in the moment as to what should happen. Should someone be stood down? Should they be immediately suspended? Should they be fired? It is something that you will have to consider and talk through your HR team if you have one, or seek out the assistance of a HR specialist. However, you have a duty of care to not only the participants, your clients, but also to your other staff under your relevant health and safety legislation to ensure a safe workplace as well. So it is something to consider, and there is not sort of a one solution that will fit all, really. And then lastly, an important note, which you probably are aware, is the reportable incidents. There are reporting guidelines and stipulations of when you need to notify the NDIS Commissioner within an appropriate timeline. So for serious reportable incidences, deaths and serious allegations of sexual or physical assaults, they will attract a time frame of within 24 hours, and there are quite specific details that you also need to provide in that, which are outlined within the rules. For other reportable incidences, you have I think it's up to 5 days. My advice when you are brought or information comes to light in regards to an incident, regardless of whether it's a reportable incident or an incident, you need to take notes where appropriate, of course. It's really important whether you keep a diary or you take notes in your calendar. You need to be mindful of, obviously, the security around them as well. However, taking notes is really important because if in the event, especially in circumstances where a matter may go to a criminal court or even a civil matter down the track into a civil court, your notes will be important to rely upon in relation to whether you need to make a statement down the track or you're called to give evidence, especially in regards to if you're ever questioned as to the reasons behind the decisions that you make at the time. And I know hindsight is a wonderful thing, and there are many things that we would likely do different when we're not in the under pressure. However, taking notes is also a great way of then slowing down our thinking and collecting ourselves to then really piece together what really needs to happen next, whilst also getting all of the relevant information that you need in that moment. So times, dates, locations, names, any possible other relevant matters regarding the location. So there could be that that there's CCTV on a particular site. There might be other potential witnesses that you need to identify so that you can pass that on to the relevant authorities, or if it's a matter that will be staying with you because it's not a criminal incident, but it is an incident that you need to investigate. These are all important pieces that you need to put into one area. Be mindful of potential evidence contamination. I know that most of you aren't trained forensically, but it is just something to keep in the back of your mind during these times. Obviously, you need to always go back to the safety first principles, of course. The welfare of the person making the report, the welfare and the well-being and the safety of for all parties involved, in particular, obviously, the person who is reporting the matter, who is the victim. But it is handy from a police point of view to just be mindful. So if an incident has been alleged to have occurred, and again I refer to a sexual assault matter, say in a particular space, it would be great to then close that door and then make sure no one else attends in that room, if possible. Maybe it is cornering off a particular area, and so on and so forth. But again, it is just something to be mindful of that could assist investigators. Where you're not sure, always seek guidance from the relative authority, relevant authority, such as the police, the commission. It's always best to ask. And I know most of police would be happy to receive a phone call, especially when in doubt too. Just to note, your incident management system needs to be relevant to your organisation. So there are a lot of off-the-shelf products out there that will create these beautiful systems for you, policies and procedures already pre-written And I'm not knocking any consultants out there. There's some wonderful consultants doing some wonderful work in this space. However, you need to own it. It needs to tell your story. It needs to be specific in regards to your services and your supports. It needs to identify your specific risk areas. And it also, you need to consider what incidents have occurred in the past and what may likely happen in the future, depending on the services and supports you deliver. So really own it, make it your own, and test it as well. Proportionality is key. Like I said earlier, whether you're a sole trader, your incident management system may look extremely, I would expect it to look extremely different in regards to a complex, large organization. And a really basic flow chart, might do. That will indicate some really, some key steps in your management process regarding incidents and how you're going to manage them and report them and how you're going to record them as well. Review is so important, and you're already required to conduct internal audits, as part of the NDIS Practice Standards. So, use that activity in order to test the relevance and currency of your incident management system, because there's no point in having something that is no longer relevant. And I think feedback and consultation also filters in here. It is a requirement of the practice standards that you gain that feedback and consultation as part of your incident management system. It really is an integral part of your continuous improvement activity, and it does sit alongside the internal auditing. So together with regular audits, you can demonstrate confidence that the incident management system is effective and can be relied upon, because that's what you want it to be. And it really is there not only to support participants, but also to support you, the users of the system as well, the ones that are there to manage, the ones that are, where the buck stops with you, to report these incidents, because when certain incidents do arise, it can be difficult in the moment sometimes. Dealing with the stress, dealing with people's trauma and their needs in that moment, and you need a really robust, effective way of just getting on and doing the job and doing it well, meeting your compliance requirements, meeting the needs of the people in that moment that you need to be meeting, the participants, and also supporting your staff through this process. So I hope that is a short overview, but I hope that's somewhat helpful for you out there. And I'll leave it there. Thank you. Thanks for joining me. My name is Loren Gray, and I'm from Gray Management Systems. And I hope that you found this helpful. Thank you.